I know I've mentioned this a few hundred times, but this is probably one of the most important sections of this, albeit one of the most boring sections of event and venue safety. But if you get a handle on the vocabulary, you will be head and shoulders ahead of the other folks that do not know this. And believe me, these are words and codes that are known throughout the industry. Public assembly occupancy is the facility whose primary purpose is the gathering of crowds. No kidding. That can be anything from churches to concert venues to locations for a wedding. Now, AHJ is a term called an acronym for the authority holding jurisdiction. That would be the city, a private organization, local authority, a county, a parish in Louisiana, whatever, holds the rules and regs for that. They are the governing body. Egress means the way you get out of a building. So there's a typo on that one. It's not means of exit in a building. Well, yes, it is. That's funny. Exit in a building, meaning the ways to get out of that space. So let me try this again. Egress is the means to get out of the particular building, exits within the building. Occupancy is how many people obviously that can fill that space safely at any one given time. Now, the NFPA, if you signed up last week, you know that they have a bunch of information. But the Life Safety Code 101, these are the regulations and the building codes. They apply to new construction and temporary structures, renovations, you name it. This could be a tent that you put up outside to hold a wedding or a concert. And even if you watch the Barrett Jackson or any of the my favorite car shows and car auctions, they're all done within a tent, which is a temporary structure. The building inspector is responsible for all of this, and chapters 12 and 13 focus on new and existing public assembly occupancies. Now, you can see a summary of this on the NFPA website. And let me tell you, that thing is huge and it's very expensive. So I don't expect you to go out and buy it, but it is referenced, and most of your local inspectors know these codes forwards and backwards. Now, there are codes specific to portable cooking equipment. I'm talking about chafing dishes that have the sterno at the bottom, or any kind of candles. There are regulations that cover that, the wick size, whether it's solid or liquid, and all the candle flames should be protected. That's part of it. That seems like it's a no-brainer, but yes, it's part of the code. Here's another one that goes on. It covers open flame devices and pyrotechnics, like we saw in the previous lessons. You can see where that is now very important. We 1273.2 and 1273.3c deal with flames that are out in the audience. As this little video shows, there are regulations for that. Now, it covers liquid and solid propellant, distance from audience, distance from flammable products. It requires certain spotters to be available. It covers fire extinguishers, even the wick sizes and types, and more within these regulatory areas. Of course, it has special provisions for expos, and one I want to bring out, or one we want to talk about here a little bit, is the car and boat shows where vehicles are indoors. The rule of thumb is you can't have any more than 10 gallons, and I believe the standard these days is about 2 gallons within the gas tank of either the boats for the boat motors or the cars for the car motors. You wonder how they get them in and out of there, believe it or not. So there's also a regulation that the battery cables need to be removed so there's no accidental starting or a spark in a closed environment. You can certainly see where that would be an issue. So CMs and CMSs, these are crowd managers, or trained crowd managers, or crowd manager supervisor. The CMs and the CMSs are required with more than 250 people. This is an event staff that is trained in emergency events, for example, a fire. There are common sense items that you need to remember, and believe it or not, you would think these are common sense, but some people do not take these things into account, which is the fire extinguisher sprinkler systems all up to date. And they have been inspected. All the egress areas are clear from obstructions. It bothers me like crazy when I go to in the backstage of some of these venues, and it's covered in tables that they've moved out, bar stools that they've moved out, all these things that block exits. You'll see them in bars, and if you get around some of the venues that do this on a regular basis, you'll see what happens. And it's good to go in there and clean those out every so often. Now, the doors, of course, should remain locked and accessible, especially during the event itself. There should be a identifier that shows where the exit to the building is. And code says 32-inch minimum width for these exits and aisles, but I use 36 as the minimum ADA requirement. A good example is if you can stand in the middle, put your arms out and turn around, you've got decent amount of clearance that should pass code. Egress has three parts. The means of getting out of there, the exit and the exit discharge. That's the section on the outside. In this example, you're seeing the means on the inside, you're seeing the exit itself and the door, and then you're seeing the exit discharge, which is the way to get out. Don't forget about ADA compliant. That's a major part of this as well. From Chapter 7 of the Life Safety Code, 7 net square feet occupancy for concentrated use without fixed seating, and 15 net square foot occupancy for less concentrated use without fixed seating. 11 square foot for those of us in the casino business or gaming areas. For example, sports betting and things like that. The CDC, or the Center for Disease Control, also offers its guidance through a hierarchy of risk controls. Now, the most effective is the elimination of the physical hazard, whatever that may be. And it goes down this list, this little funnel, if you will. You replace the hazard with something else. You can isolate people from the hazard. That would be engineering controls. So you keep people at a safe distance away from those. That's one way of doing it, and you do that by design. You change the way people work, which is often kind of tricky because you have to work with the physical plant as well. Or you also train them on how they are delivering items to a table, for example. You protect the workers with PPE. That is become a big topic as of late, as you know, all going through COVID. So there you have the CDC's hierarchy of risk controls. But ideally, you want to make sure the elimination of any kind of hazard is taken care of from the outset. Here we go. These are ESA glossary of terms that are important. Artist is the talent, obviously, that's performing at an event. And this can be anything from a band or an individual. Back of house is the space behind the stage or behind closed doors in some cases that the guests typically are not able to go to. Boneyard is the area where the empty boxes, the crates, and I've seen stacks of inventory, what have you, in the back. A lot of times laundry, all sorts of things you got to be on the lookout. And this is what I talked about earlier about having the right egress. Sometimes this boneyard and the egress collide. Now, call is the time when the work starts or when the show goes on. Call board is, in essence, a schedule. A lot of times it's on dry erase boards. Other times it's a little more formal. But you check that. That's in the back of the house usually. The deck is the stage floor. Doors are the time when the event or the gates open for guest entry. Downstage is the part of the stage that is closest to the audience. Here's a nice little chart here that shows it. Downstage, center stage, and upstage, left stage left, stage right. Also, feedback. Now we all know it, or we've all heard feedback. It's a noise that comes out of the speakers when the mic picks up the output and it's amplified, and it usually is a high-pitched scream out of that. Everybody kind of cringes when it happens, but it's usually easy to identify, and the sound engineers can take that down a little bit. Fly the fill in the blank. It's a term used to raise something. So you're flying the speakers up in the air, flying the light kit up there, all kinds of things like that. Sometimes you have superstructures that will help you. Front of house is the area of the event that the guest sees or the guest experiences. It's everything that is accessible to them. And this says also location where the audience sound is mixed. Yes, I've actually seen that being portable. With technology these days, you can put a complete sound mixer for a full orchestra or a full band in a iPad, and they'll walk around. So it can be pretty much anywhere when that occurs. Gaff tape, it's similar to duct tape, but as I've learned many times, it doesn't peel your skin off when you use it, but it's used to temporarily hold things in order. The gel, these are the color pieces. You see them over here on the right, and they usually go over gobos, or they go over other kind of lighting. They're called cans. You'll see these big, they look like big paint cans sitting up there. These gels will go over those to make different types of colors on the stage or wherever you're pointing them. The gobo is a metal disc that has holes in front of the light, and it's used to project a pattern. You can project logos, you can project the band logo, you can project anything your creative mind can come up with. And these, by the way, gobos can move or they can be stationary, and they can be timed as well. The green room is back of house area for the staff and usually for the talent. Handheld is a little microphone. Okay, high vis is anything that is highly visible, and it's apparel that's usually worn by staff. Now this is a bunch of hard hats, but you'll also have high vis security guards and high vis rafter workers and all those kind of things. A lot of back of house is high vis. The house is the venue. Juice is electricity. Lav is a lavalier microphone. I use a lavalier microphone a lot. It's those. It's a little wire that's clipped on. It looks like a bug almost on your shirt or on your top. You'll see it a lot of times. On-air personality uses it. I use it a lot for the lectures. Your PA is your public address system. Pipe and drape. That's the pipe and aluminum that's back there with usually a very dense cloth that's put in front of it. It's a drapery. A lot of it is used at trade shows. I've used it in some venues to delineate back of stage and back of house and front of house. It just all depends. You can get real creative with this stuff. Some of it's 8 feet high. I've used it, some of it as high as 20 feet. Pit is the area between the stage and the first row of seats. Sometimes it is used for orchestras, backup bands, lighting, monitors, security, definitely, and some of the stagehands that provide separate guitars, for example, is a good example I can come up with. Or even they'll have water. That's where they hand it up there. But this is where most of the security is, and the stagehands are located. Places, it's a command from where the stage manager when the event is about to begin. So you'll have somebody yell out places, which means you go to your spot. It's usually either gaff tape or some level of colored marker on the ground that shows you where you're supposed to be. And it can get as detailed as to your left foot goes on this mark and your right foot goes on that mark. Preset. Well, this is the magic of technology. It's putting as much as you can place as possible before the event begins. And this can even be a preset sound, if you will. So it's programmed to run for 6 minutes and 32 seconds, for example. You hit go, and then that goes, then it says at a certain time, this particular act is coming out, for example. That would all be a preset. Preset is also setting the room where you have tables, chairs, those types of things. Producer and promoter, if I could talk, it'd be easier. Producer and promoter is the person responsible for arranging the show and all of its expenses. They are basically the general manager, and they handle both the act and our liaison with, or work with the liaison for the venue itself. Production manager is responsible for all the technical crew. They have to contract for services, including lighting, sound, all the trucking, the catering, you name it. They're the ones responsible for the production itself. That's a fantastic job, by the way. If you guys ever get a chance to do that on a concert tour and work with a production manager, it's fantastic. Road manager is the person who's responsible for all the concert tours, the scheduling of appearances at venues, anything that is occurring while the band or the act is on the road. Situational awareness, we talk about that a lot. That means being aware of your surroundings, everything that is going on, coming, going. It's kind of a chaotic time, and I'm thinking, again, in terms of concerts. Sound, this is the staff that manages the sound equipment. Pretty common sense. Spot is another term that you would think makes complete sense, because it's literally the spotlight. It's used to illuminate a specific location on the stage or on a person or on a wall, but nonetheless it can aim at a particular location. Stage left and right is the direction from on-stage perspective. So in other words, if you're standing on stage and you're looking at the audience, stage left will be to your left, stage right will be to your right. Stage manager is the person in charge of all the backstage operations, and they work with production for a smooth execution of the production. Now, most of these groups, these management teams, all work together. They've worked together before and they know each other. It's pretty simple. They've got it down to an art, even though it can be somewhat complex. Technical director supervises the technical areas of the house. House TD is what they sometimes call them. Sometimes these guys are located at the venue themselves because they are accustomed to how everything is wired. They know the ins and outs, the electrical areas, all of those kind of things. Tour managers are responsible for organizing the administration of large concert tours. And actually, I've seen them in mid-sized concert tours. We see this a lot in the casino business. We'll deal with tour managers for certain acts, and they handle the scheduling of the appearances and the venues and what have you. Now, a trap is an opening in the deck. Literally, you've heard a trap door, and it can be used for effects. If you have ever seen, either on TV or in person, Cirque du Soleil, not only do they have all of these terms and all of these people that are associated with these, the tour manager, what have you, the technical director, so on and so forth, they have multiple traps, and they are used for multiple effects. If you've seen them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Upstage is the area stage furthest from the audience, and sometimes that is closed off with structures, or it can be closed off with curtains or anything. But upstage is the part that is furthest away.